All right. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody has stayed safe today and warm as well, and what has been an extraordinarily snowy day. I will ask everyone, bear with me today as I try to juggle all of the things I usually have open when we aren't fully Zoom. So I'm looking at an interesting screen. So the time is 6 o'clock. I will now call to order a meeting of the Liquor Control Board. Um, and before we go into the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, I wanted to take a moment just to say a few things. The reason that I personally say the pledge before every meeting is my belief in what this country can be and what it is supposed to be and what it is supposed to mean and stand for. Over the weekend, so many Winooski residents have felt lost, scared, afraid, upset, angry in where our country currently is at the moment. And the entire council is saddened and furious about the deaths in Minnesota. Our hearts go out to those families of Renee and Alex, to people who cared for them, for their community that is mourning them and feels so many painful emotions right now. Alex and Renee just wanted to help their communities, and they're now no longer with us. So, to the people of Minnesota and across the country, for whatever it may mean, the Winooski City Council is thinking of you today. With that said, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Deputy Mayor Oakleaf is not here, so I am happy to lead that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Jenny, we will continue our Liquor and Control Board meeting. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So staff has no concerns. The three are all conditional. The one that is all set is Beverage Warehouse, and staff has no concerns.
Wonderful. With no staff concerns, I do not have any questions. Counselors, do you have any questions for Jenny?
Is the conditional similar to others where we're just like waiting on an inspection?
Inspection,
Okay. No other concern.
no.
Thank you, Aurora. All right, with that, I will seek a motion to approve the consent agenda of the Liquor Control Board meeting.
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, let me go back to all of my tabs. The time is 6:03, and I will call to order a meeting of the Winooski City Council. Our first topic tonight will be agenda review. Councilors, do you have any items on the agenda you need moved around or need to discuss before we move forward? All right, I'm seeing no's. In that case, we will move to public comment. This portion of public comment is reserved for comments and questions on topics that are not included on this agenda. The time for public comment for any of the other items will happen during each agenda item. So if you have any public comment that you would like to share, please do so now. Elaine, is there anybody in council chambers?
Elaine is muted.
Yes, there is someone in chambers, but there's no comment from that person.
Okay, wonderful. If you are online and you have a public comment to make, if you will just please raise your hand. All right, seeing no raised hands, we will move on to our consent agenda. On today's consent agenda, we have approval of Liquor Control Board meeting minutes of January 20th, 2026, approval of the payroll warrant, January 4th, January 17th, approval of accounts payable warrant, January 22nd, and approval of the City of Winooski Health Reimbursement Arrangement Summary Plan Description, and approval of the City of Winooski Flexible Spending Account Summary Plan Description. Any concerns there, council? All right, so I will seek a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will move to council reports. I'm going to do this how I see you all on my screen. So, Councilor Goodrich, let's start with you.
The Winooski Housing Commission will have a joint meeting with Planning Commission on Thursday, February 26th at 6:30 at City Hall. That is all that I have.
Wonderful. Councilor Turcos.
I don't have any updates at this time.
That works. Councilor Hurd.
Also no updates at this time.
Wonderful. All right. Let's see. I do have updates. Where did I save them? All right. So, Planning Commission. This is, I think, what you all are probably expecting. Has continued their discussions around amendments to the Unified Land Use and Development Regulations, sections 2.3, a variety of those, all the way through 6.6. Again, this is cleanup for amendments for gentle infill. There was particular discussion at this meeting around utility boxes, sheds, garbage storage, planting enclosures, and mechanical boxes. Also discussions over how an entry to new buildings must be placed in terms of street location. We are also looking forward to the joint meeting with housing, where I think they will talk to them about a lot of these things that they have been talking about for the past several weeks. Wonderful. We'll move on to city updates. Elaine.
Sure, the fiscal year 2027 budget process continues tonight, where the city council will vote on the final budget that they will propose to the community to vote on. After this meeting, the budget cannot be changed, so when we get to public comment, if you do have feedback on the budget, please provide it. To view the full proposed budget and the remaining meeting opportunities where you can learn about the council's proposed budget that they'll finalize today, visit winooskivt.gov/fiscal year 27. That's FY 27. Everyone in Winooski is invited to the Community Winter Supper on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That'll be at the Winooski School District. Join your neighbors to build community, enjoy free restaurant catering from businesses on Main Street, connect with city council and school board members, learn about the city and school budgets, and have a great time. We've packed a lot into the event to name just some of what you can expect. Community members can try the city's budget activity, check out a Winooski fire truck, get creative with an art project, register to vote, sign up for summer programs, apply for a city job, learn about school clubs and programs, and lots more. Residents, voters, students, and families are all encouraged to attend. For full details, visit winooskivt.gov/supper and be sure to share the event with your friends and neighbors. The city of Winooski has partnered with the Vermont Language Justice Project to create informational videos with instructions on how to request an over-the-phone interpreter at Winooski City Hall, the Winooski Police Department, the Winooski Memorial Library, the Winooski Senior Center, and the Winooski Community Services Office. A staff person can help you use the I Speak sign to request an interpreter over the phone when you're at any of these locations. Visit the news updates section at winooskivt.gov to watch these videos. They are provided in English, Arabic, American Sign Language, Burmese, Dari, French, Karen, or I'm probably saying that wrong, Kinyarwanda, Burundi, Mai, Mandarin, Nepali, Pashto, Portuguese, Somali, Spanish, Kiswahili, and Vietnamese. Community members can also schedule an in-person interpreter or have written documents translated by calling 802-540-1467, 540-1467, or emailing communications@winooski.gov, winooskivt.gov. And that's all for me.
Elaine, thank you for those updates. I am so excited for that community dinner. It just keeps sounding like it is turning into more and more of a fantastic event. So thank you to you and staff for doing a lot of work making that a reality for our community.
Pleasure.
Does any member of the public, either in the audience or on Zoom, have any public comment around the council reports or the city updates?
See you shaking of a head.
All right. I'm not seeing any hands, so we will move on to our regular items. Regular item A, discussion public meeting. I'm opening up this public meeting for the EPA Brownfields Cleanup Grant 2026. Ray, I see you have popped on. I think you'll deliver us some information about this.
Yes, and a few folks are here as well. I know Amy from CHT, and then I believe Kirsten Merriman, Shapiro, and then somebody from KAS is also here to present. Just a quick table set on this, but as folks know, we've been working very closely with CHT over the last few years on a redevelopment project at the O'Brien Center. Through the course of some of that required environmental testing up front, we discovered under the library a plume of some contaminated soil. So have been doing ongoing work through CHT with KAS, which is an environmental contractor, to kind of determine the scope of that and kind of incorporate that into the project budget as it's being developed. So I think Amy can give a little more detail, but fair to say the discovery of that and the sort of scope of it from a financial perspective ended up being higher than was initially carried in the project budget. Fortuitously, there was this EPA grant that was brought to CHT's attention. And so they have been working diligently with support from us on an application. Building is still owned by the city, and we, as a result, need to be the applicant on this grant. We are planning to do so again with support from CHT. But one of the required steps in that application process is a public meeting where the community can kind of hear about the project and weigh in and ask questions. And that needed to be warned, I believe it was 14 days in advance, which we did. So here we are tonight having that meeting, opening up those questions. And with that table set, I'll turn it over to Amy to take it from there.
Thanks, Ray. And thank you, City Council, for allowing us this time on your schedule to talk about this project. As Ray said, we've been doing a lot of environmental investigation in partnership with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission Brownfields program. They've spent close to $85,000 on the assessments on the site. They've been a really strong partner. We just recently completed the last of the assessment with CAS, and they gave us a cost estimate, and the cost for cleanup was just under $1 million. So thinking that that's a pretty big expense for us to try to find sources for. At the same time, we discovered that there was this EPA opportunity. So you should think about this. It's really just the timing of this is an opportunity. If we don't get this EPA grant, we will seek other sources. But the timing is just right to try to bring in this level of funding to the project. So Cascades Dorj is here from CAS, and he's going to present what we've found to date, what the cleanup alternatives are, and talk through the other grant issues. So if Cascades can share his screen.
Yes, let me see if I can do it here. Give me just 1 second. Yeah, I believe only one can, yeah, just. Yeah, my apologies. It seems that the Zoom is not letting me share it. I think Elaine, did you send it to Elaine, Amy? If not, I can just start talking. Yeah, if one of you can just share it, but I'll just start basically talking about the project. So as Ray said, we've been doing environmental work on the project since around 2014. We discovered, well, prior to that, we kind of reviewed the site history. That's usually the first step, kind of figure out what has the site, in this case, the O'Brien Community Center, been used to historically. Through that, we discovered that since the 1900s, it's been used as mixed residential, mixed commercial buildings. Of these of note, there's specifically a dry cleaning facility that was there for at least a decade. And we also identified fill material, which is just a fancy way of saying trash that you use to kind of fill the soil to change soil elevations. In this case, it was a lot of railroad material, mostly ash, which makes sense since it's bordering it, and then a lot of building fill material. What we did back in the days is whenever we had leftover building materials, we demolish an old building, we just put in the soil, put some soil on top of it, and then never worry about it again. But we usually would have to worry about it now when we find these contaminants on it. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Here's just a big quick picture of the site map, kind of just talking about what we're looking at. We, of course, have the O'Brien Community Center in the middle. Then we have the apartment building complex that's actually subdivided now. And then we have the railroad just at the bottom, which kind of cuts through the actual grass area at the community center. Some of the parking is also on the railroad side. So in terms of what we found primarily of concern was PCE, which is tetrachloroethylene. It's basically just a solvent that you use for dry cleaning, but you also use it for industrial solvent purposes. But in this case, we're almost entirely sure it came from the dry cleaning facility that was there for over a decade. PCE is carcinogenic if you ingest it, or if you're exposed to PCE vapors over a long period of time. So what we found is that there is a PCA plume. Lane, if you can go to the next slide. There is a PCA plume underneath the building area. This is, like I said, from the old dry cleaners back in the day, especially as you would have sometimes leaks of these cleaning chemicals. There was also a little bit of PCE outside in the garden, the former garden area. Now the garden's at the back. Outside, it's generally not caused to be of concern simply because it's diluted in the air almost instantly. But we found there was PCE underneath the library building, which was then in the soil and then slowly would kind of gas off to have these vapors that accumulate that could be hazardous. Similar to how inside a building, smells accumulate as do other vapors. So we had to find a solution for that. So what we did was if you go to the next slide, we installed an SSDS system, or sub-slab depressurization system, which is just a very fancy way of saying that you dig a hole, you create negative pressure, and you just have a fan that sucks everything out. So as you can see from the picture on the left, just outside the building, we have the SSDS system where there's a little hole underneath it where it sucks out all the vapors from the soil, and then it exhausts just at the top. So we kind of catch those vapors before they could be hazardous for library users. But we actually had to shut down the library for an extended period of time to install the systems to kind of show that there actually was an issue here and a potential hazard. But we installed the SSDS system and the vapors were prevented, and this has kind of been temporarily solved for now. There's still the plume in the soil underneath, but based on our testing, it appears to be stable and there's no real danger of it affecting outside site users because it's such a wide area. If you go to the next slide, there's just quickly about the groundwater. We also found it in groundwater in the monitoring well just outside the library building. Makes sense, it's the same plume. But it was not deemed to be of concern as it was the depth of water, which is how deep you have to go to find groundwater, was greater than 6 feet. PC is not really bioavailable, which is an easy way of saying, well, it's a complicated way rather, of saying that plants can't really absorb it super easily. So the vegetables that were grown in the garden, not really of concern. It's more if you directly drink this groundwater, but given that it's over 6 feet deep, we don't expect anyone to be drinking it, because why would you? And secondly, there's no groundwater, drinking water extraction in the area. We don't have any private wells where people take the groundwater. So we kind of just monitored the groundwater over time, the last 2 years. And then we, like I said, made this PCE soil gas solution for the library building. So I want to talk quickly about how the redevelopment relates to this contamination. As you can see, maybe it's not the easiest to see, but basically the existing library building is going to be made significantly larger, which is, of course, poses a problem because this PCE is underneath. In addition, they were also going to install some stormwater systems within the new community garden area. So what we did is that we went out and did some additional testing. If you go to the next slide. Basically, what we did, we set out to test a bunch of different things. We tested contaminants that are commonly found in soil that's been contaminated by fill. Again, that's either this railroad ash or just old building materials that were buried here, just to make sure that when we excavate this area to expand the library building and to install these stormwater systems, if there's any contaminated soil, we take care of it right away instead of just leaving it on the site, so we can kind of get rid of this contamination. In addition, we also further investigated soil gas, again, these vapors coming up from the soil, and groundwater. And we did this to make sure, okay, we know there's a contamination here. Is it spreading? Is it affecting other properties, especially the ones on Hickok Street or further up near the apartment buildings? Or is it just contained to this area where we originally found it? So if we go to the next slide, this is maybe a bit overwhelming information, but I'll basically just summarize what we found. The PCE in the groundwater we found previously, that was still there in the exact same location, but it decreased. So it seems like over time, this PCE is breaking down. There's a lot of microbes, like small bacteria that can. It just takes a while. That's why it's been there since, the 70s. This decreases slowly over time. The good news is that in any of the other wells or any of the other soil get points, that would be the green points and the pink dots. Those are all areas where we tested either groundwater or soil gas for PCE, and we didn't find anything. So that means there's no risk of the offsite properties, the ones on Hickok Street, being affected by this. Similarly, there's no risk of the apartment buildings or other parts of the site being affected by this PCE. So functionally, we know it's under the library building. It's been there. It's still there. And we need to address it when we redevelop the property, but there's no risk of it affecting anywhere else. It's just kind of contained there where it was originally spilled from this dry cleaner. However, in this, we also found lead and PAH, which is just basically carcinogenic compounds that are left over from burning. So you burned a bunch of ash for the railroad. You just tossed the ash in the soil. And then this kind of incomplete combusted ash can have some petroleum compounds that can be hazardous. That's the kind of simple explanation of it. But we also found lead, which is likely from either the ash or the building materials. And now, since we were going to be applying for this cleanup grant, if you go to the next slide, we also wanted to clean up the property because basically we've divided the contamination into 3 areas. It's a little bit hard to see here, but we have the 2 red areas. That's for the redevelopment of the stormwater. Here we found PAH. We also found lead. And then we have the green area just at the back of the site. We found a little bit of lead there, not enough to be considered hazardous according to Vermont urban levels. But if we're going to be cleaning up the site, since we have all the excavation equipment there, we were still planning to excavate that area just so we can get rid of all the soil and we can have a nice clean site for when the community center is expanding. If in the future they want to expand the community center out or something similar like that, then we have it all. So to kind of summarize what we're doing, we found PCE under the library. That's been contained with the SSDS system now. It's in the groundwater, but only right around there, and it's not deemed to be a problem. Historically, these places are basically anywhere you've had a dry cleaning facility, you'll find a similar contaminant. But the new thing we found as we kind of checked more of the soil is that we found PAH and lead throughout the site, specifically within the new library building area and within the community garden area. And we were planning to have that excavated as well as part of the redevelopment. Even though not all those areas will be redeveloped, we still want to get rid of them when we have the excavation equipment here, especially now that we're applying for an EPA grant, which would help fund this community cleanup that other funds might not be able to fund. So yeah, that's about it. That's all I have. There's just a bigger map at the last slide and then some figures in case someone had some questions. Yeah, thank you.
So we are open and available for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very appreciated. We all know the cost of doing this brownfield work and cleaning up these sites that had these different types of hazardous wastes there, and it's necessary to clean them up before we're going to have any type of development on it. So it's always exciting when there is a grant that can assist in doing that very expensive work. I don't have any questions. The presentation, thank you, answered many of the thoughts that I had about this, but I would like to open it up to my fellow counselors to see if they have any questions for you all. I am seeing that we do not have any questions. Oh gosh, sorry. As this is just for discussion, I think we are able to move on to the next item. However, it is a public
want
meeting.
public
So
comment?
yeah, no, that's what I was just saying. It is a public meeting, so this time is now for either folks online or in the room to offer comments, ask questions of the folks who have presented today about anything about this project and this potential application. So that said, let's start with people in the room. Elaine, if you can help facilitate that.
Yeah. Just so they can see you better.
Yeah. Hi, Eli Ogilvy. I just have a quick question. Do we know the likelihood of the grant or the grant being actually accepted? And if it doesn't get accepted, what would be the plan for the site?
Good question. It's a competitive process. We've gotten some encouragement from the Region 1 EPA folks. They think it's a competitive application. Also, the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission folks also think this is a competitive application. They won't make a decision until June. So hopefully it will be funded. That would be amazing. It would be really great. We can just move this forward using those funds. If not, we will look for other brownfields related funds in state. We'll go to the DEC, we'll work with the Regional Planning Commission, we'll cobble together various brownfield sources and move forward with the cleanup. There may be some areas like Aske was explaining, there's areas on the south side of the library that has dirty-ish soils, but they're not to a higher level that require cleanup. We may leave those in place, for example. So we'll do a little bit of reviewing of the scope to see what we can do and cobbling together various brownfield sources to get the cleanup done. Most importantly is taking care of that PCE plume under the library.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
We're all set in the room. Thanks, Thomas.
Wonderful, thank you. I do see that there are attendees online. Does anybody online have any questions for the folks from CHT? I'm not seeing hands raised. In that case, I will close this public meeting. Elena, I always forget. Do we need a vote to close a public meeting?
No, you just move on to the next item.
Okay, well, in that case, I will just move on to the next item. Thank you so much. So our
Thank
next
you.
item, yeah, thank you. And thank
Thanks,
you
Amy.
for joining us today. Thanks. So our next item, discussion approval, the final fiscal year 27 budget. So we discussed it at length last Monday, the budget. I mentioned it last night and it's in my memo, but I thought that it was an incredibly productive conversation, and I really appreciated everybody's insights and input. After the conversation that we all had, Elaine and I had our typical weekly meeting, and we discussed some items that I kind of shared to you all. Elaine made a recommendation, and my recommendation to all of us is that I agree with what Elaine had said. The budget options tool was sent to us with the edits that Elaine had mentioned, which would result in a tax increase of 8.01%. I do believe that that would achieve many of the goals we were all looking for last week. That said, I mean, I think there's still quite a bit obviously left off of the table. But we can't do everything. So that said, Elaine and my suggestion is 8.01%. But we are here to continue that conversation, to continue looking at this budget tool and what we ultimately want to put towards the taxpayer. I think the best way to start this conversation is maybe if somebody who's controlling Zoom could pull up that adjusted budget options tool so that council can see that. Elaine, I'd also like to give you an opportunity just to discuss kind of how, or maybe not how, but what has been done to land at this number.
Yeah, so I think Angela's prepared to share her screen with that budget options tool.
Absolutely.
And
So,
Aurora, I do see your hand. I don't know if you want to talk before.
No, I think this ties right in. I'm particularly curious, or / would love to hear more about the thoughts around the commission stipends, because that's the one that I feel is a priority, but it sounds like there might be some other things to take into consideration.
Sure. Give me a minute while I pull up my memo.
And I will share, while Elaine's pulling that up, Deputy Mayor Oakleaf, shared some thoughts on this, and one of them being the council stipend. The deputy mayor wondered if maybe we don't do that full increase this year, but maybe half. And then,
I
gosh.
disagree.
And Elaine, I'm trying to find the email from Bryn. If you happen to have it closer, there are some other things that Bryn had recommended that I am trying to find. I need a bigger computer at home, you all.
I have that at hand if needed.
Oh, that would be great,
It
Angela.
might be
Yeah.
helpful to put that on screen, actually, Thomas. Do you want to do that first, or do you want me to go through the proposal
No,
first?
if you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. So the context for this, which council has seen, but for the benefit of the public, staff really appreciate that council has taken to heart that the message that staff has been sending over the last at least 3 years, probably before, that there's a lot of unfunded needs of this community. And that, the city is supposed to be taking care of those things more or less. But we're now so much in an unusual position where I'm recommending city council temper the tax rate increase that you were contemplating at the last meeting, which would have been a proposed or a projected increase of almost 12% in the tax rate. My big concern is that the police department bond would be collateral damage to a very high tax rate increase. I'm not saying I know that that would be the fact, but that is a big concern because it is a major retention and recruitment issue, the conditional police department. So in light of that, the leadership team had a thorough discussion. Actually, we had the discussion of not thinking very strongly about that, just mostly thinking about palatability of a 12% tax rate increase or close to. And, just to be clear, we actually, our first pass through, we agree with council, we didn't take anything out because it's a good list. So just saying, putting that out there. But because we did feel like that might not be palatable voters, we went back through and with a more higher degree of scrutiny. And going one by one through the budget options tool. So in row 28, that's the commission stipends, which Aurora just asked about. So the staff, since I've gotten here, and actually before that, I know there's been discussions from the staff liaisons to the commissions that some of the commissions don't function the way they're designed, in the sense that the agendas are not necessarily set by council. Oftentimes the staff liaisons are left trying to figure out something that the commission can work on. And the thing, but that's not been universal during my tenure. This is the first time in my 3.5 years, almost 4 now, that now every staff liaison to a commission is saying that I'm starting to have to create agendas, sometimes out of what feels like nothing. One of the reasons why, I discussed this a lot with the former mayor, Christine, and one of the reasons why I didn't want to touch it is because there is a value in having a body of people who have a responsibility and expectation of they have a role to understand city operations over time. And so when we do need their advice, and we do need advice from the community from time to time, they're kind of prepared to do that. They have the knowledge base. They know they have a role in that. That's an important function, and that's why commissions exist at all. That's why any community would have a standing committee, commission, or board, outside the statutory required ones. However, now that we're in this situation where every staff liaison is saying, I'm having to create agendas, now that we're up against the situation where you know, we've had ideas over time as staff of like other models that might work better for that function, right? Like we want the community have a say, an informed say in what the city is doing. As you know, according to questions that council want to ask, policy questions that the council wants to ask the community. So we're feeling like it's time to come up with some other models for that. And there's a couple that they've discussed, which we think are worth trying, I think are worth trying. So the most tried and true approach has been issue-specific, time-bound working groups. There, we have several examples of those working very well. People, you know, attended those very consistently. You know, any of us who have volunteer, we know that best practice for engaging volunteers is making sure that they feel like they have something meaningful to do. That matters like as much, probably more than money. It's just like, I know my time is worth it. So that's one example. And we have lots of things over the course of a year that we would want community input on. And I think that the council's policy priorities and strategies structure actually lends itself very well to that, because, you know, at least once a year, council is saying, these are the big policy questions that we have that have been informed by leadership, by the staff. And these are the specific questions we want the community input on. So if that seems like, I'm not at all presupposing what council wants to do, but I'm saying that model would work. I think there's a way for that model to work. Another option would be, say, frequent meetings open to like a whole bunch of the community. So I'm also feeling optimistic about the community supper idea. The school district has already tested a model like this. That's why we pivoted to this model to try for the, you know, as like a, you know, bearing the lead on the budget conversation, bring in people in community, have this opportunity to connect. And but actually have it be an opportunity to talk about something very substantive, very policy related. So if that works well, then it could be something that we make use of for other topics. So those are just two examples of how we think something other than a commission model would work. As many of you have pointed out, and it's often seen in the literature and like by practitioners, the commission model works for a very small portion of the population. So we are, like council, hoping to come up with a model that works better for much more of the population. So in light of that, it's a very long-winded way to make the case that we feel that it might be premature to set commission stipends, given that we don't know, like, we can't even calculate what that might cost, because of course council has to decide on an approach for community engagement, which is what commissions are actually about.
I appreciate this. And I think my one follow-up question is, if we do look into those other models, especially thinking about one like those bigger community dinners, does that need funding itself?
Yeah, so that was the thought that I was trying to cover out of my brain, so you picked right up on that. So yes, I'm imagining that will need money. We do need quite a bit of money to pay for the catering for the community supper to make it attractive. And you know, we're paying Winooski businesses to buy the food, so it's like it makes sense, right? It's a good closed loop sort of approach. So, but that amount of money could come out of fund balance, and then you don't have to build it into the tax rate right now. We have a very healthy fund balance right now, so that would be that's part of my recommendation. Also, when I'm
Gotcha.
looking off to the side, it's because I'm trying to look at your face, but the camera is right in front of me, so.
No worries. I guess with the fund, that all makes sense. My final like follow-up question is, with the fund balance, we are kind of flagging a couple other things to be used with it, especially some of our capital items. So I guess that's the one thing, like considering some of the other things that are kind of in mind as a possible fund balance expensive, does it still feel does it feel okay to like add another idea into that? Again, with the acknowledgement that it might not happen or might not cost as much this year as we
Yeah, that's a
budgeted
fair-
here.
Sure, that's a fair question, and what we could do is once council has decided that you finished the discussion of the budget. Or like reached a point where you wanna look at the full picture again. We could have Angela pull up the fund balance tracking sheet and then we could look at those and we can comment, staff can comment on likelihood of those. And see what the total impact is before you decide on the budget.
Already ready to go.
Awesome, that sounds great.
Thomas, shall I continue on the memo?
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, so row 31, translation of documents, which to a point that Elsie asked about earlier is we consider broadly to include translation into video. So I would recommend actually postponing an increase to this line. We do already have money set aside for translation. And the reason for this is because essentially, but it might sound like, oh, we're postponing equity. But translation of written material is not actually the most valuable means of providing language access. Creating videos is a good way, creating audio files is a good way. Much better is like having the person talking to a person in their language. All those things are would come before translation documents. So we again propose postponing this, not taking it out altogether necessarily, but we're still in basically the first year of this new language access procedure and the availability of in-person interpretation and audio, or not, I'm sorry, not in person, but interpretation on demand. And I would argue, still working on our community engagement to the point where translation of documents would become something in high demand. So that's why I'm recommending that we postpone that investment. Are there any questions about that before I continue? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you want to hold off until we have some more data.
Correct, exactly, yeah.
If for some reason we do go above what is currently budgeted, is that another tap into the fund balance? I guess that would be my one worry, because I don't want to I assume given what we've done, it would be like, oh, we've hit our budget, we're not going to translate anything else. But just trying to brainstorm that, like if we did use up what's in there, what next?
I mean, essentially, yes, we would, there is always the option to resort to fund balance, in a vacuum, right? There's always competing needs, as you know. Yeah, that's what would happen. It is possible that I would not recommend that in face of other demands, so that is a possibility. That's the point of budgeting, right? Like, as you know, is that you have it set aside for that purpose.
Yeah, I've been wondering as I've looked at that line, like $6,000 isn't a lot of money. I still do understand it gets us, down to a lower rate that we're hoping for. But I wonder if even if we budgeted for like $1,000, I'm guessing an amount like that might give us that cushion that Councilor Hurd is kind of talking about, but also wouldn't add too much more to the budget. I don't know if we could see that play out, Angela.
So we could potentially do that. I do want to flag that we have not spent the existing $6,000 of translation of documents money that we have in the budget to date. So there already exists a cushion within the budget.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it didn't change it a huge amount, but knowing that, Angela, I'd also be okay to just zero it out, but happy to hear what other councilors' thoughts.
I'm thinking I would feel like lessening the 6,000 would be a nice compromise, because I also want us to be in the position that should this outreach yield some interest in something, we have the resources to move forward and translate something, rather than pausing on this now, doing more outreach and finding out that this is exactly what folks need. So I would advocate to keep something in there, but we could lower the amount.
Paul, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just checking my mic. I had some mic issues earlier. Can you guys hear me? Great.
We're good.
If it helps, just throwing this out there. So in the language access procedure, one of the best practices is to put together a collection of what's known as vital documents, and we did get some quotes back. One from AALV for about 9,200 for basically all of the documents that could be included with that list. Elaine and I have talked about phasing that in. And then we got another quote from a much bigger provider for around 12,000. So if those numbers are helpful for anybody's context, that's what those are.
Again, thank you, Paul. Again, this is the list of like the nature of those vital documents, if you want to hear about them, is that we don't expect to need to translate them more than once in a very great while. So that's why I phased approach. And given that made sense to me, also given that nobody's requested them to date, it's like it makes sense to do that over time when it's the least useful thing that we can do. I mean, out of language access. Shall I continue?
Yeah, go ahead and continue. Oh, no, sorry, Councilor Hurd, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm also now kind of leaning towards maybe we could do slightly less, but still increase, because currently in our budget, just for folks in the audience, currently in the budget, we do have 6,000. So this would be adding an additional 6,000 just for kind of year over year. But I think doing something to increase the amount that we have seems like a good idea. Even just a little bit.
I agree.
Do we want to leave it at this 1,000 and continue listening to Elaine and see where we end up, and we can readdress at the end? Okay, that sounds good.
All right, thank you, Thomas. So row 37, the 16th police officer, I know I was probably very loud with my recommendation that this be included. But again, after that discussion in the leadership team level, if we do not have a renovated police department, it won't matter how many positions we have, because we won't be able to fill them or keep them filled. So in light of that, and the fact that staff, especially full-time staff, especially very skilled full-time staff, highly trained, like police officer, are very expensive. This is one of the more obvious trade-offs that we're recommending I'm recommending in the budget. So that the police department bond has a better chance of passing.
This makes a lot of sense to me because we are focusing on that bond. And in addition, there is that additional funds going for a 5th dispatcher. So that feels like we're meeting some needs. Unfortunately, we can't meet all of them, but yeah, the logic of this made sense to me.
All right, not seeing anything else, keep going. All right, row 39, entry level public works engineer. And honestly, it's just the same. John had not planned on asking for that right off. It was really about the additional capital needs, but to be able to address all those complaints that council hears from the community, that we also hear. But if we're not funding those things, then it's a little premature to fund the person that would do those things. And again, trying to make sure that we get that bond in, and this is an expensive position. Because highly trained, full-time, benefited.
Angela, could you just toggle that to yes, just for a second? I'd like to see what that position does to the amount. All right, so it goes from 8.01 to 9.76.
5%.
All right, thank you. You can put it back.
So the last set of comments that I had in the memo were kind of global, so. This point Angela made, which is worth repeating here in the public meeting. There's a lot that we need to do, as council has heard. And looking at ways that we don't cramp that ability to raise funds to do those things is part of the strategy. And once we add a position that is, it's a, not a, looking at it from one perspective, that is it is a choice limiting activity essentially, because the cost for every year, we would not want to, lightly add and subtract positions. So that's where we're cautioning to be thoughtful about when we're adding positions or hours. Positions being full positions, benefited positions being even more expensive. And in terms of just a reminder, I know council's heard this, but as a reminder for what other costs we need to be planning for, the capital plan will increase by $400,000 in fiscal year 2028. So the one after this one that you're voting on, because the payments for the bond for the Burlington-Winooski Bridge start in that fiscal year. So that is something that is coming. So yeah, there's two kinds of strategies, at least for thinking about budgeting. Like you can step into a bigger increase so that the ultimate increase that you need, it doesn't seem as alarming, or you can just raise it when you need it. And that is absolutely a policy choice that council has. There's pros and cons to the both of those options. I'll say that for a community that struggles with affordability, honestly, like it could cut both, either of those options could cut both ways. So just naming that. The fire station renovation with payments starting in fiscal year 2029 is something I'm likely to propose in time for that budget. We're on our way towards that expense, and we've been making the case to council for that. There's a study that's in the current fiscal year budget for that renovation. And that's needed again to address our staffing challenges from our current model, which is a hybrid full-time and part-time model. We just can't get enough part-timers to fill the shifts that we need overnight when we don't have full-time staff on. And then finally, out of those pending or likely near future year costs, St. Michael's EMS service has already asked us for a good chunk of change. In FY 27, they've graciously agreed to postpone for a year. And they do still need to make the case for an increase, but I'm anticipating that they will be coming with something rather significant for fiscal year 2028. We have been getting EMS service for free for a long time, which is extremely unusual. So I would be surprised if they didn't have a case to make to the city. Any comments or questions about that before I turn it back to Thomas?
All right. Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I guess we'll open this up for further discussion from you all. I think I greatly appreciate staff, coming to us and saying, hey, all of those things that we were kind of advocating for at that meeting, we're actually gonna take some of them back. I tend to be a cautious person. I I'm not sure I believe that the bond vote would fail if we funded some more of this budget. However, I definitely don't want to be wrong. So I do appreciate Elaine coming to me with these asks. I do, if council had the gusto, I would say, for testing out my original thought, I think the only position I would advocate for this year would be that entry level DPW engineer. I I know John hadn't even considered asking for it, but as he spoke about it, I really felt like so many of the problems that we see and hear about, both both from staff saying they don't have the capacity, but also from residents just complaining about things that they want to see done. It seemed to me that this position would, probably not fix everything, but certainly help alleviate a lot of those problems. Um, so if we don't fund it this year, I, foresee, if I win election on town meeting day, um, would likely be pushing for this, but then additionally that 16th police officer and any other asks that we have coming down the road. So, as I kind of said in my memo, we're still going to want these things next year and, years after that probably. And there will be, as, Elaine just mentioned, additional things that we have to spend money on. So, a year making savings is either just holding things back and putting those costs on a later year or just never doing it at all. So, um, I'll leave it there. Again, I'm not going to push too hard on that. As I said, I do agree with what the city manager has said, and that was my recommendation to you all. Um, but if you all feel differently, strongly, or just kind of would like to talk it out more, I'm happy for that conversation right now. And then also, again, I just, as the deputy mayor isn't here, she just texted me. She's stranded in South Carolina trying to get home, but the storm is preventing that. Angela or Elaine, were you able to find the other asks that she had uh, for potential changes to this
I,
budget?
yeah, I also found them, Angela.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I had done up a budget template for Bryn's requests, which included removing the HRA funding and the VEMR's funding, and cutting the council stipend increase in half, reducing the NFPA physicals by half. And I do want to flag, this is something that hasn't necessarily been brought up. We just received the information on the Next Gen 311 program about an hour and a half ago. It is not $1,500. It is $10,000. So
I'm
staff had said no with that price tag.
okay. All right. Yeah, it sounds like
Okay.
a lovely program, but for $10,000, we can continue. People can continue emailing me and I will reach out to city staff.
But those were the additional changes that Bryn had asked about seeing to try and get this tax rate down closer to 7%.
Okay. I am in strong support of the NFPA funding. I know that, the chief had kind of said that's something that they are required to do. If they're required, if they're federally required to do that and they're just pinching from other parts of their budget when we already know the fire budget is pretty tight, I don't want to leave him in that situation to try to find money elsewhere. Um, the other two items, I do believe, there had been some discussion in council about those amounts.
All right.
Forgive
Can
me if
I,
I'm incorrect, Councilor Goodrich, I think you had some questions around the HRA funding.
I am just wondering I have some reticence about going into VEMR's if it is a one-way street and we cannot back out in the future. And for the HRA, I guess I would just be curious how it fits into a larger management compensation plan.
well, I can answer from personal experience of leaving a job that did not give me a high enough HRA to make that payment for a job that would cover that. So I definitely think of it in a retention setting. One of our biggest costs is healthcare. If there is a way that, and this is like a relatively small price tag, if there's a way that we can just make that a little easier, I am all for it. Because yeah, from personal experience, it is very much a factor on like, will I stay with this employer?
Councilor Hurd, I appreciate you bringing up your lived experience on that. When I had heard of when we originally received these presentations, initially, I was in support of them. I think I still am. Um, our staff works very hard, and we've got the retention issues. We don't pay as much as some of our neighboring municipalities are able to. So I think they're good programs. The cost is, they're bigger chunks. Not as much for the VMers, but for the HRA for sure. I wonder, and just for more information, this isn't where I'm leaning at the moment, but are there lower amounts we could contribute to those that would still be beneficial to staff, Angela? Or are these kind of the levels that are needed?
So right now we fund 4,500 for single and 9,000 for two-person or family or adult with children plans. That is bound in union contracts, so the amount should not be lower below that without negotiation with the unions. The proposal to increase those amounts was related to the growing deductibles on insurance plans. When the 4,500, 9,000 was established, deductibles were around $10,000, $11,000 for families, and $6,000 for single. So we weren't funding 100% of the deductible, but that amount has stayed steady with deductibles growing. So employees have become responsible for a bigger and bigger donut hole after the city's HRA runs out. So this was just in an effort to try and re-equalize that back to the original percentage.
Something to consider too is that we don't budget the whole amount. We budget some trend of it. And a lot of
55%.
And a lot of employees don't need it all currently. And so that would, the cost of the city is not increasing proportionate to the growing donut hole. It would be, yeah, it's just this much. There are employees who regularly exceed the HRA and then are left stressed out for the most part, some of them, because they're on the hook for these more costs.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think those are my comments for right now. Council would love to hear more from you on those items I raised.
Yeah, I am very much in support of anything we can do to show our staff appreciation, but again, keeping an eye on the percentage and keeping that in mind, I would push back that $25,000 is not necessarily a small price tag, and I would like to discuss lowering that. Yeah.
The 25,330 number is for all existing staff who take health insurance from the city. It roughly equates out to about $500 per employee.
So but is there any way that we can lower that amount so it's not an increase? Like, could we do up to 5,000 and maybe 10,000?
Would need to do a little bit more analysis to get you a number because we aren't budgeting for the full 5,150 and 10,300. We budget 55% deductible use. And I'd have to take a look at the different enrollments that we have to come up with an actual figure from the number of people who are in single plans versus other types of plans.
Okay.
Councilor Goodrich, I appreciate that question and you posing a number. Angela, I'm not a healthcare specialist, but that sounds like that might take you a little bit. I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
not something you could have right now.
I can probably 5 minutes.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Well,
Before
okay,
Angela does that, should we check in as a full council just to see where the majority is on that item? Because my vote would be keep it and keep it as is.
My vote would be remove it, but I am willing to come to a compromise on reducing it.
My question is, if we remove or reduce, sorry if I missed this, do we have to go back and negotiate with the union?
No, we haven't offered them anything, so.
Okay.
That's only if we were touching what we currently offer. This is an increase to what we currently offer.
So we
Thank
can't
you.
reduce it below 4,500 without having to talk to the union. But
Yeah.
anything
I
above
don't think
40.
anyone wants to like
No,
take
no,
away
no,
what
no,
we're
I'm sorry.
currently
I'm just,
offering.
yeah, just so that Al's got full
Yes,
understanding.
I was just clarifying. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess in that case, Al, would you want to see what it looks like at 5,000 and 10,000, or do you want it to remain the same? Or remain as is suggested here?
Yeah, my face is not helpful. I lean towards, I think, remaining as it is here, but I
just want to put out there, I don't want staff to get to a point where they've used up their HRA and they feel like they have to choose between groceries and needed medicine, which is, again, I have been there. That is the worst. So
Yeah,
this is just a little thing we can pull back, give them a little bit more security.
I think also because I'm just thinking if we're pulling from other places, and I've also been in that place, Counselor Hurd, and that's why I'm like deeply acknowledging it. And maybe not acknowledging is the right word, but anyway, yeah. So I lean towards not touching it at the moment.
Okay. Given I know Councilor Oakleaf was hoping to get this like slashed in half, I believe.
This one
And
was cut.
oh, completely cut. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
Given that, I guess I'd like to see what Angela finds. I think if there is a huge savings, it would be worth a conversation. But if it's not, I would say that we keep this. I hear uh Councilor Hurd what you're saying here. You know, I even in that vein, it's like, well, we could add more because there will definitely be some people who are going to have some expensive medical bills. Um,
Well, it's just bridging a gap. It's bridging that gap between when their insurance will kick back in and take the whole amount. And if we're in a high deductible plan, as Angela said, this is actually kind of getting it back to where it was. So that also to me speaks of like staff that have been here for a long time, they have seen it then a decrease in their benefits. So it would make sense to align that back to where the percentage was before.
I understand. I'm thinking that there is a bottom line here, and I'm concerned about citizens also not being able to afford groceries and increases on the tax hike that do contribute to that. So if there's ways that we can shave this down, that would be appreciated, because there are a lot of people in the city still on a static income that are being concerned about being priced out.
do we want to talk while Angela's doing that? Do we want to talk about VMers? Where everybody falls on that?
I would remove VEMRs if we keep the HRA at where it is.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Aurora.
I could agree to that.
I could agree to that.
Agreed.
All right, Angela, I'm seeing agreement here. I'm in agreement. How about we just do that instead of having you continue working on what figuring out where the numbers would be? Okay, so that puts us at a 7.91% tax increase. which is even lower than what was suggested by the city manager in the new memo. I did talk about the engineer. I don't know if folks are just fine not doing it this year, or if you want to continue that conversation.
I don't think this is necessarily going to get us to an engineer, but if we have the council contribution as Deputy Mayor Oakleaf suggested, that gives us a little bit more room to potentially open up that conversation. But I don't know if you'd just like to move to engineer first.
Um, if we half that council stipend, what would that increase be, Angela, to council and mayor?
Second, I actually did that math out in a different template. So if we have the increase to counselors, instead of the mayor making $1,700 a year, the mayor would make $2,550, and each council member would go from $1,500 a year to $2,250.
And that's if we half it. Okay. I mean, you know, I have a hard time with this one because I think we had a hard time even putting it on here at the full amount. And I fear if we don't do it, it's going to be something that likely will never get done again. And obviously halving this isn't gonna give us the money, you know, a plausible tax bump that will make the engineer seem more appealing. Um, and I
I
like to
think
think of this as future councils and not the current people who are sitting in this seat. You know, I can say, um, from taking on the mayor role, it is an awful lot of more work. Um, than the council role, and the council role is an awful lot of more work than when these stipends were originally created. Um, yeah, but you know, it's an easy one to cut, right? We've been doing it for this amount of money, so why not, you know, do it for a little bump instead of a big bump, which, you know, the big bump isn't really even that big.
I think that's where my thinking lines is that it's not a lot of money now. It's not a lot of money at the bump. A half bump is still a symbolic investment in like the future equity of this role, while still keeping an eye on the bottom line.
You know, I mean, I even want to, you know, I mean, the deputy mayor asked for it to be halved. I mean, that doesn't mean we have to have it, but we can recognize that maybe we reduce it a little bit. I mean, I'd propose $6,500.
Which
If
would probably
people
be
are
like an even number
if
for
people are
whatever shakes
interested
out to.
in lowering it and in the desire to try to bring this tax rate down.
What was the thought of the split between mayor and council members?
You know, I mean, I don't like, you know, it's again, it's awkward to advocate for oneself, but I have been shocked by how much more time I have to put into this role than I did as a counselor. And Elaine has seen the emails that come to her at 11 p.m. or after, and sometimes I just schedule send so that they go in the morning so she doesn't see how late I have been doing things until. And that's you know, not it's not me, that will be every mayor who takes this role who also has to have a full-time job, um, which is a lot of people in Winooski, so.
I said it before, but
Hmm.
just so it's not just the mayor saying it in this meeting. The mayor definitely has to do a lot more than the council, and the council is doing a lot for not very much pay.
Yeah. I just feel like, again, thinking of it as an equity issue, it checks off so a lot of the questions on our equity worksheet. And it isn't a huge amount. And I want to acknowledge that last year, the school board increased their, actually to match us. So acknowledging that they were below us for a while. And it passed, they had it as a separate item on the ballot, and it passed at a higher rate than the school budget itself. So I think there's an acknowledgement of folks within the Winooski community that the work that is being done is important, and that acknowledgement of it will be more accessible to more people if we're able to have that increase. So yeah, and also feeling like I don't know when we, if this would, I don't know. I worry that, yeah, we'll just keep kicking it down the road forever until it's just like ridiculous.
Well, that's the thing. Or like I see all of the things we're not funding this year, and then know what we're going to be asked. We've got some knowledge of what we're going to be asked for next year, which sounds expensive as well. And are we just gonna, yeah, kick the council stipend off the sheet because it's an easy thing to do? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's easy for us but it really is thinking about equity in the future of these positions.
Exactly.
So while it can be easy for us to be like, yeah, I can make that sacrifice, we're then making that decision for anyone who wants these roles and are elected into these roles in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think of, if I had to pay for childcare for every one of these meetings, for the 2 commissions I have to attend, for other activities that we do as counselors, that probably would have eaten up my stipend if I was using that. Probably would have needed more money to pay for childcare, actually. So yeah, I do think it's an equity issue. Yeah, I mean, I take back my $6,500 amount. I think we should leave this where it is. I'm not seeing disagreement from folks.
I think I'm willing to compromise on this. I would feel better at increasing it only by 50%. Because I still don't think that's enough. Like I don't think that would be enough to cover childcare, or like any other hurdles that someone could have to attending this. But I'm willing to compromise on this.
I know there are members of the public, I believe, still in City Hall chambers, and there are folks online. We've talked a decent amount, so I do want to give folks a chance to make any public comment on what we've just spoken about or anything that we've spoken about in the budget so far. So if you do have any comment online, again, just raise your hand. If you're in the room, just let Elaine know you'd like to speak.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hi, this is Eli Ogilvy again. This wasn't really talked about in deep discussion, but the entry-level engineer position that DPW would be potentially asking for, what additional roles would they be able to take on that they currently won't be able to take on without that position?
Thomas John is here if you'd like him to answer.
Fantastic. I was just going to ask if John is available.
Yep, thanks. So everything that was presented in the budget is, sorry, excuse me. We expect to be doing that in-house between our 2 admin staff, which is me and our city engineer. So this position would basically be supporting the roughly 22 projects we've got going on next year into FY27. And day to day, so basically they'd be helping with small projects. So I know council requested the RRFB installation. A small project like that, even though it sounds like easy peasy, it still requires like preparing bids and engineering documents and managing a contract and inspecting it. And so that position, for example, would support a project like that versus me and Ryan, who are also just trying to like, basically we'll be closing out the Main Street project, starting on the Winooski Bridge project more in depth than we are now, the Hoods Crossing project. So they'd be supporting like those smaller projects, line striping, contracting, the paving work that we do annually. And they'd be doing a lot of data collection for us and inspection. So, doing GIS work, doing some AutoCAD drafting work, reviewing the, many permits that we get when the weather starts warming up for, everything from sewer connections and water connections and inspecting those. Right now, Ryan and I go out and inspect those as well. So it would definitely help on the stuff that's currently on our plates. And it would probably help us focus more on the bigger projects, honestly.
Okay, I'll ask a follow-up question. Do you expect the workload for this person to continue on beyond the bridge? Like, let's say 2030, would you expect the workload still to continue on until then? Or would you and your engineer be able to take on that role?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things in our current staffing is we used to have a utility manager that was kind of in charge of the wastewater treatment plant and the water resources. We've absorbed that position, Ryan and I, because there's not a lot of folks that do that kind of work that has that skill set. Usually somebody that's in the field or you're a manager. We were lucky enough to have a utility manager that could do both things. And so right now we're actually kind of down a position, and that staff position would help us kind of restructure the admin side of it. So yeah, it's bottomless. It's probably some of the counselors will know about, just given all the emails. So there's definitely a lot of work for that person to do, even past the bigger projects.
If I could jump in, there's also, I don't know that there is gonna be an end to the bigger projects for some time. So there's that too, in terms of like, there's always gonna be work. If council is trying to find somewhere to cut back though, we did discuss, actually, I don't know that this would cut it back. But we had discussed the option of potentially having more of an intern type role. We've had like seasonal helpers in the past, which have worked out. Of course, they would need to be retrained, so that's another option if you want to hear about that. John can speak more to that.
I would be very interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, so this was kind of discussed at leadership as like sort of a middle grounds option, or maybe a stepping stone to get to this full-time staff position. So we have had interns in the past. Usually they come from like a civil engineering degree. We've had a intern from UVM. They're not going to hit the ground running and be doing like project work, but they would definitely help with some of the inspection work and some of the data collection side of it.
Okay. And almost sounds like you'd need the full-time position plus the intern, but I appreciate that an intern can add some added help. Thanks, John. Eli, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I think the intern position would be good. That being said, as someone who has been an intern engineer, I would say we're not much help because it's only 3 months, and by the time we finish, we don't really know. We were getting to the point where we can't help. I think co-ops are more beneficial, but I know UVM doesn't do co-ops in the same way. Co-ops tend to be like 6 months at a time. So if that is an avenue to look into, that would be great. I am personally biased and I do like infrastructure, and I think it's really important for Winooski to continue to focus on that. So if this position can't be filled or created this year, I think in the next year, that would be a great thing to see presented again. Thank you.
Got another one, Thomas.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, this is Brian Colombini. I live on Winooski Falls Way. I also want to speak in favor of the engineering position. I think my understanding from the discussion at the last meeting was that as more of like an entry level position, there would be some like onboarding time, and I think making sure that there's also capacity for that person to have like a positive onboarding experience is an important consideration here. And in the context of that leading up to major projects with the bridge project coming up, I think it's important to consider that lead time. So I'm in favor of that being added to this year's budget. I also want to speak in favor of the increased stipends for council and the mayor. It's also a little awkward for me to talk about it, but not as awkward as probably for you to talk about it. I think this is like the first budget season that I've really been tuning into closely, and I've witnessed like how much care and work that you all kind of put into bringing like your whole selves to these meetings and doing your best to be a voice for the whole community. And I really appreciate that. And I was at the meeting where former Mayor O'Brien spoke to how the stipends haven't been increased in, I think it was like about 20 years or something like that. And I was surprised to hear that as somebody who didn't know that. I think it's probably something that most folks in the community might not know, like just how little that stipend is for you all. And maybe would like share my surprise in knowing that it hasn't been increased in that long. So I want to share that. Thanks for all the discussion. And also add my 2 cents on like the helpfulness of the budget tool here. I think that credit goes to Angela, but also as a member of the public trying to follow along, it's really helpful to have that structure. And it sounds like it's really helpful for you all in that way. And also as somebody just trying to follow along, appreciate the structure that provides. So thanks.
Thank you. Very much appreciate your comments. It's also very helpful for us to follow along too. So glad it works for the public. Wonderful. Any other public comment online? Okay, all right. Thank you, Council, for letting me do that pause for public comment. I will turn it back over to you all for further discussion. I guess maybe Angela, to continue the conversation, can you put that DPW back to a yes so we can see what that does to the 9.66? Personally, I think, I mean, I was okay with asking the taxpayer with our last budget. I do understand the concerns. I do think bringing it below double digits, though, is much more palatable for folks who were concerned about a large tax increase. Like I said earlier, I do foresee filling this position, if not this year, next year, with the addition of the police officer plus the other asks. So I think, to the folks, to the counselors, it's, do we want to fund this now at 9.66, or do we want to fund it next year at, I don't know what it will be, but my guess is going to be more than 9.66, given the other position. I think that I can imagine getting a firmer ask from the chief for would be, I think it's 130,000 or something like that. So I don't know, what are you all thinking about this engineer position?
I I'm so much of two minds of it does reduce the tax rate so much, but also if it is just going to be on the tax rate later and probably with a whole bunch of other asks that will be make it like just thinking of easing folks in, plus the fact that it is addressing or will help address so many of the concerns that we're hearing. Give John and his team that additional support. And it sounds like it will need like a year or so to really get onboarded. So thinking about that too, of like, that will then be perfect going into some of the other, like the bridge project. Whereas getting someone onboarded while we're also doing the bridge project does feel like a lot to ask, both of the new person and of John. So that really is like, it's so much money, but is it money we're gonna have to spend anyway? And is it money that's meeting some of our loudest needs?
And thank you, or I appreciate those comments. And just for council's awareness, 9.66, I'm not going to say it doesn't sound like a lot, but we're looking at $26.06 a month. So it's under that $30 mark that I think was alarming to some people. But just for some context.
I also just want to echo what Councillor Hurd has said in the sense of just timing regarding the bridge project and the idea, even to me as, in my capacity as a resident of Winooski, I know that I'm in a city council already, but I'm just thinking that here, I mean, I'm really putting my hat on for next week at the community supper and just thinking about like talking to residents and neighbors and community members and saying, particularly like with this line item or talking about this engineer position and letting them know that, we are like really preparing for our Department of Public Works and for the bridge and for other, items that are coming up. Obviously, for a lot of folks, I'm thinking about, I was at a Safe Routes to School meeting recently. John was also there. And like we have folks from Watt in the room, and that our Public Works Department is something that people in our community deeply care about, specifically when it comes to like sidewalks and line striping and some of the things we obviously have to contract out. But I think showing our commitment to public works and that we are obviously very dedicated to municipal infrastructure. Again, as Councillor Hurd said, ahead of a very large construction project, I think it's, as we've all said, this is a budget is a moral document. And I think that this really is showing us that we're living and operationalizing our values. And one of that is through our Department of Public Works.
If I could throw one suggestion out, because I'm also very much of two minds of this position, but doing like playing around and trying to get that percentage down. If we are increasing public works capacity with an engineer and that will free up more time, could we then look at the part-time seasonal position for community services, that if we remove that, it's not a 1-for-1, certainly, but that would perhaps Public Works would have time to continue doing what they're doing if they have an additional engineer.
I appreciate you raising that. I'd like to hear from both John and Ray on that, because I think the last time we talked about this, we had wondered if this new position would be able to assist the parks position, and I think it was a no, but it was a long night. So John and Ray, I'll let whichever one of you wants to speak first go on that.
Yeah, I can just throw in. So the entry level position, I don't think would probably have much overlap with the the seasonal parks position. So the entry level engineer position is more of an administrative position, where I think Ray's sort of goal with that seasonal staff person is more on the field crew, like, you know, trail maintenance type work. But I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's totally correct. I think really the work that seasonal position would be doing is much more kind of boots on the ground labor type work, you know, helping with trail maintenance projects, lining soccer fields, you know, helping with maintenance in the community gardens. You know, there may be little projects here and there that have, you know, an engineering component, but I think by and large, they're pretty different functionalities. And I think and John, I'll maybe speak for you a little bit. Feel free to disagree. I think where John's team really feels the tension that this seasonal position would relieve is more in terms of the street crew. So, you know, they're out trying to pave streets and fix sidewalks and do the work that has to happen when the weather is good. And that for us is the same time when, again, we're lining soccer fields and trying to clean up, you know, a tree that fell over on a trail and some of those pieces that we're then pulling street crew off to help us out when they're able. So I think they're pretty different impacts in terms of the workload.
Yeah,
I'm
one
just
thing I
wondering if
will.
there's
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there's any trickle down with, like, I understand these are very different roles, but if, you know, any sort of admin or work could be taken off street crews and given to this new engineer, if there's any wiggle room created.
Potentially, like I'm thinking of very specific examples. So, you know, if a contractor's out doing work for new development, sometimes like a street crew field staff person will do some inspection work on that, which ties that person up from doing, you know, actual maintenance work. So this intern staff or this staff engineer would be performing that work, giving us a little bit more capacity. But yeah, I kind of agree with Ray. Like our peaks unfortunately align when work needs to happen, which is always, you know, difficult. But yeah, there might be a little bit of capacity gains, but I'd want to see how that actually plays out before, you know, saying that we're going to gain some field crew capacity with the intern position. One thing I was just going to say is, you know, we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, but like I'm split between multiple funds. Ryan is split between multiple funds. I suspect this position would have some, you know, could be split between water and sewer fund. It would increase the water and sewer fund slightly, but you know, I would expect the staff person, given the feedback we get from the residents, would primarily focused on street items. So that's something you could consider too, like say, you know what, we would like to see 75% of this person's time focused on like street items and then the other percentage focused on water and sewer issues. So just throwing that out there as a way to potentially get that number down a little bit.
John, I appreciate that. I know the last time water bills were due, the clerk's office received so much outreach from folks after we raised it last time. I'm hesitant to add anything to those bills more than I think the increase that we're already looking at. If that's how Angela, you know, creates the salaries for these folks, that's one thing, and if that's how it has to be. But my preference, if we were to do this, would be to fund it this way through taxes as opposed to the water and sewer bills.
I think my preference would be if we're seriously considering the entry level engineer position, if there is some curiosity that this could free up time, would be to postpone the part-time seasonal position for a year and genuinely look at if that does create any more time and if that the workflow between community services and public works is aided by this before we look at the community, the seasonal position again.
For me, I have in my mind that the seasonal park maintenance position was part of the like initial pared down absolute need budget from city staff. So I would probably prioritize it on my end. I think it is also meeting area where we get a lot of feedback. And it is that lower price point. So yeah, for me, I would prioritize that just with that acknowledgement of that was part of like staff's original budget to us, with a couple other items.
Agreed. I would say yes to the seasonal and then say no to the engineer and I can't think of the word right now because I don't do sports, but football it or kick it or whatever to fumble it to next year or whatever.
Punt
Sorry, I'm
it,
not a sports
but-
person. Punt it. Oh my God, thank you.
But I
Sorry, guys,
greatly
I'm-
appreciated that train of thought.
yeah. I'm a hockey person right now.
As we all should be. So I'm hearing Councilor Chirkos, you'd be a no on the engineer. Councilor Goodrich, is that also where you stand?
Yes, unless we're willing to start looking at other things that we've already discussed again, then I'm a no on the engineer.
Okay, Councilor Hurd.
I think similarly, I can't imagine cutting any of the other things we've discussed, which feels bad, but.
Right. All right, well then let's move that to a no, Angela. And I shall remind those of us who are here next year of this conversation when we when we look at a very high increase, I'm assuming. All right, I think those are all of the things that I had brought up asking us to look at today. I think we've looked at the things that the deputy mayor wanted to talk about had she been able to be here. Counselors, is there anything else you would like us to go over?
I just want to solidify that we're landing on $1,000 for if you could scroll down, Angela, please, to the translation. Just because that felt like a soft touch. Is that where we're landing?
That looks like what I see there. Yes. And it's on yes.
Okay.
Can we just peek at it at 2,000? Just like how much of a percentage does that go?
3,000 is 0.01%.
Would folks be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
So again, this is not the only for folks in the audience. This is not the only money going towards this. This is to increase the money we already have.
Yeah. Okay. I am seeing 7.92, and we have had a good amount of discussion about this. You know, I'll acknowledge, you know, the deputy mayor would love to be here. They were hoping we'd get a little lower than this, but it is in fact below the revised amount that the city manager spoke to us about that I agreed with and concurred with them on. So I would like to seek a motion for the estimated percentage increase of the tax rate at 7.92 for total budget of $12,458,921.87. Thanks for highlighting that for me, Angela. I'll seek that motion to move this forward.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. Elaine, I don't know if there's any more technical language you needed out of me for that.
I don't think so. Angela,
Okay.
hold me.
I think we should be okay. We're gonna be adopting the warning later in this meeting. I'll have the numbers to Jenny for the full formal warning.
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you
With
for
that,
that.
I'm gonna call a little 5-minute break here. That was a lot before we move on to other things. So we will return at 7:52. I'm not sure if that math is right, but we'll return at 7:52. Thanks, everybody. The time is 7:50. I will call the meeting back from our break. So we will move on to our next item, item C, discussion approval, City Hall renovations, bond resolution, and warning. Elaine, or whoever's going to speak about this, you're all listed.
Yeah, so as council had requested last time, we actually expanded the definition a little bit to include a little bit for city hall aesthetic renovations upstairs. And then there was some discussion from Councilor Oakleaf, about making sure that police department was explicitly called out, so we have that language ready if council would like to consider that instead. It's really a policy decision and also like a strategy decision. If you think that it makes it more likely to pass, that is one of the considerations. So the idea behind the bond, as originally proposed, was about the police department mostly. I think you've all heard the discussion about the health concerns down there, the fact that it hasn't been touched for at least, I think it's my lifetime. And that is a major retention and recruitment issue. So if there's questions about that, we can talk further, but that's the gist of it.
Elaine, thank you so much for queuing this up. Yeah, the comments that the deputy mayor made about including the police department language in the bond, I do appreciate, I think that especially after the Burlington Free Press article that has certainly made its rounds, folks would like to see those renovations complete. And, not only is this a retention and a recruitment issue, it's also, I think, kind of falls inside of our equity work, not just for our officers, but for the people who do end up getting detained down there. I think I'm not sure how many people have been able to do a tour of downstairs, but folks do have to share restrooms with the officers and vice versa. So there's a lot of work and a lot of different communities that this will benefit to doing that renovation. And then, of course, the cosmetic touch-ups upstairs, I think will give Winooski residents a little more of what they deserve in their city hall when they come in to pay their taxes, or when they come in to sit and join us for a city council meeting. So I'm all for this with the language change recommendations from the deputy mayor.
I also agree with the language changes. I think it is also just feels more transparent.
Yeah, the bulk of the money would be going to the police department.
Yeah, I'm in agreement along with the language changes for transparency.
Same.
Wonderful. In that case, I seek a motion to move forward the bond vote with the language to indicate that the police department is also being renovated.
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Great,
everybody.
thank you.
And I'm sorry, not in the room, so I'm not seeing the public. Is there any public comment on this item? I know we just voted, but I am happy to take up that public comment now.
Not seeing any. Thanks, Thomas.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Item D, discussion approval, East Spring Street Sidewalk Bond Resolution and Warning.
Yes, I think you've talked a lot about that, so unless you'd like me to tee it up further.
No, I think this is, it's something that the community has greatly expressed that is needed. We I think have all agreed with the community and expressed those same frustrations ourselves as we've traveled East Spring Street. So council, if you have anything pressing you'd like to add, let me know. Otherwise, I'll seek a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. And I did it again. Public comment. Is there anyone who would like to comment on the East Spring Street bond?
Hello, this is Brian Colombini again. First off, want to thank the city and council for moving this item forward. The community, and I'm a member of the Winooski Alliance for Active Transportation Steering Committee, and we've heard a lot of the concerns about East Spring Street and the lack of sidewalk in the area between Russell Street and East Allen. And I think this project will go a long way to addressing a lot of the concerns there. I do have a question about the language for the bond vote. For my understanding, and also so I feel like I can communicate about it with neighbors in the lead up to the vote. I am wondering like what is included in the city portion. What would this bond cover, if anything, in addition to the sidewalk? I'm thinking back to a previous meeting during the capital improvement plan presentation discussion. The discussion included talk of like repaving a segment of Spring Street and striping. I know there was also a bike lane included in the initial concept design from VTrans. So are any of those pieces included in this bond funding along with the sidewalk, or are those pieces already included in the state funded portion of the project? Looking for clarification on that.
Thomas, would you like John to come on and answer? Oh, he's already here.
Thank you, John.
Yep. So yes, so all of those things, the bond vote language, because we have the term public improvements in there along with the sidewalk. So it would include the sidewalk, curbing, resurfacing, painting, and signage from the intersection to Russell Street where the sidewalk extension or expansion ends. VTrans, as part of their Hoods Crossing signal project, does include a portion of resurfacing work. I think they typically go about 50 feet. So they'll go about 50 feet into Spring Street, and then that's where this $500,000 proportion match would cover the rest to Russell. But the majority is for the sidewalk itself.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. All right. Item E, discussion approval, Cascades Garage Elevator Bond Resolution and Warning.
Same thing, I separated these into three because there's three of them and wanted to make sure that you could discuss them individually if it was warranted. I think John covered this quite a bit. If you'd like him to do a little refresher, you can bring it back.
I'm good on a refresher. Council, do you need that? No, you know, it's somebody actually, no joke, texted me 2 days ago a picture of the elevator and said, how am I supposed to get up? And I responded, the stairs. So I am good with this. Council? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item?
Nope, thanks, Thomas.
All right, not seeing anything online either. In that case, I will seek a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. We're clipping along here. And our last item of the night, discussion approval 2026 Town Meeting Day Election Warning, City Budget. Jenny.
Paul, could you bring Jenny over? We're working on it.
Jenny is not in the attendees list.
I see her.
She's a
That's interesting.
panelist.
She's a panelist. She's here. I don't have to bring her over if she's already a panelist.
Oh,
She's already
I
over.
see. She just has to unmute. Jenny, are you there?
Thank you. I am here. Yes, thank you. So I just redid their warning and put in the amount to be raised by taxes and the amount of the budget, and I changed it to be reflected that it's the city hall and police department for the bond vote for 950,000.
So other than that, it should look the same as what you had in your packet.
Yes.
Perfect. And just a reminder, this would set our election day on town meeting day, which is the state election day, which is March 3rd, a Tuesday. Council, do you have any questions about this item? I'll seek a motion to approve this item as Jenny has it amended to move forward to the taxpayer and to set town meeting day.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Wonderful. Thank
And
you.
do you, just one thing, do you want to physically come in and sign this, or do you want me to type in your names?
I can swing in tomorrow, but I don't want to speak for everybody else. I've heard from Councilor Oakleaf. It looks like they're not going to be able to make it back to Winooski until Thursday.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I can also swing in tomorrow, but if it's easier, you can also just type in my name.
Whatever you would like me to do.
Jenny, is there any difference
No,
legally?
No.
no.
Go ahead and type it, I guess.
Type
You can
it,
type it.
honey.
Okay, will do.
Wonderful. Well,
Council?
before I adjourn, I just want to thank council. This as every budget season, Aurora, I believe we were promised at one point that budget seasons would get easier, but it has not come to be. So I thank you for your work. This is extremely difficult work for so many reasons. You know, particularly right now, you were asked to relook at these items over the weekend when I know a lot of you were trying to process everything happening, and it was difficult to do so. And staff, I'd also like to thank you all for coming up with these budgets for us. Really, you know, stretching yourselves to think of the things that you really want, that you maybe necessarily wouldn't always advocate for. Elaine, thank you for empowering your team and for putting this together so succinctly for us to look at. And then for all of you for being here and answering our questions along the way as we reconsider these things multiple times over. John, you know, I think you almost went hoarse at our last meeting from all the questions we had for you. But this has been a fantastic season of the budget as far as I'm concerned. I will admit when Christine told me that she would be stepping down as mayor, right before budget season, and I'd have to take that on. It was daunting for me, but this has truly been a lovely experience, at least for me. So thank you so much. And with that, it is 8:05. I will seek a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'm sorry, I know we just adjourned, but Councilor Hurd, thank you so much for your service to our city. This is your last budget season for now, who knows, but your last budget season, and it's been a true pleasure serving with you on this board. I've appreciated the questions that you bring to us, how you have challenged all of us, challenged yourself. It's been great serving with you. So thank you for your input this last budget season.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for leading the last one. Who knew?
Who knew? Not me. All right. We're truly adjourned. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
At all.
Bye,
Thank
Al.
you.